China is obviously economically growing and expanding. Goldman Sachs recently came out and said, "Oh, we thought that they were going to slow down, but actually they're growing even faster than we predicted." Sanctions and tariffs aren't really doing anything. China's still growing. At what point do you think China really does take over economically and become, I've been hearing my whole life, one day it'll be China. China will be the great economic power. It's happening. It's going to be here in 30 years or whatever. And it's been 30 years. I'm just curious, like, when is this really going to happen? Or has it already happened and we're just refusing to see it?
Well, in terms of purchasing power parity, the World Bank says that the Chinese economy became the world's largest in 2014. So they're from measuring what you can actually use the money for, they already became the biggest. But it's also what kind of economy one has, and I think it's been difficult to slow down the Chinese because they created such a level of autonomy that you can't really break them anymore. That is initially by cutting off their access to the American semiconductors, the computer chips. It didn't do much. They could just make their own, and they're able to essentially replace and diversify. So we said, well, they can't live without our markets. Well, yes, now they can. They have diversified to the rest of the world. They can't live without our technologies. Yes, they can. They can't live without the dollar. Well, yes, they're trading now in national currencies. They decoupled from SWIFT and developed SIPS payment system instead. Are they reliant on the maritime trade corridors, which are under the control of the U.S. Navy? No. Well, they built this massive Belt and Road initiative, which they have now, land routes as well as sea routes. So, which is why the Russian-Chinese partnership, as they share a massive border, is a big problem. There's no middle country you can disrupt, such as we did with Ukraine, to disrupt relations between Germany and Russia. So, no, I think the path of China is, well, for me, it's interesting because they've almost gone in 30-year periods. That is, after this century of humiliation they had in 1949, of course, they broke free, but then under communism, which wasn't really a great economic system. But for 30 years, they cemented their sovereignty. And then in 1979, they began to do these market reforms. They called this a peaceful rise, which meant to hide your strength while you build yourself. And this lasted all the way to 2008 and 2009 when you had the global financial crisis. And this is when they began to talk about the need to build a post-American world, which is a new economic architecture, which isn't that dependent on the US. That means to build their own technology center, to build their own industries, their own supply chains, their own transportation corridors, their own banks, payment systems, commodity exchanges, insurances. So essentially learn to live without the United States. And this is, what they're now pushing on the world, not pushing, they set up organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, and the queue to join them are, going around the corner. So there's a demand now that people are losing trust in the, decadent old system.
So how long do you think it'll take before China's the main driver of world economics, and the U.S. essentially has to cater to them? So Bank of America is now telling its wealth clients to put 1% to 4% of their portfolios into digital currencies like Bitcoin. Think about that. The second largest bank in America is officially telling people to buy digital assets, but you don't need to be one of their elite clients to get started. One of the best ways to get involved is with BlockTrust IRA, a crypto-focused retirement account that finally lets you hold Bitcoin and Ethereum inside a tax-advantaged IRA. Not in some offshore wallet, not in a sketchy app, but inside a real IRA structure you control. BlockTrust gives you options. You can trade for yourself through their professional crypto interface, or you can let their AI system handle everything for you. And this isn't hype. Their AI strategy has outperformed Bitcoin by 250%, not by guessing, but by taking advantage of market volatility. You can roll over an old 401k or IRA, or just start fresh. They support dozens of major cryptocurrencies, all stored in secure cold storage with serious insurance behind it. And right now you can book a free consultation and get a $2,500 funding bonus just by going to blocktrustkim.com. Again, that's blocktrustkim.com. Don't miss out on this great opportunity to get started in crypto investing the smart way.
could be already a decade, I think, because GDP is not always a great measurement, only in economic strength, because the problem now for the United States is it's for all the ambitions to reindustrialize. And again, I would be a big advocate for it. The big problem is that the U.S. economy become very financialized. That is, it's not able to necessarily compete with China anymore. Meanwhile, the Chinese, they've been, I guess, good at essentially emulating the 19th century capitalist model of the U.S. They're taxing a lot of their rent seekers. They're using that to build infrastructure, education, and all these things, which helps to improve the standard of living, but also make their economy more competitive. So I think it's going to be very difficult for anyone actually to compete with the Chinese on this issue. Meanwhile, the U.S. also has a lot of debt, which is now eating into a lot of its budgets. I think now it spends more on servicing debt than the entire military. So this can't go on forever. And when something begins to break, it's unclear how they can rescue the situation. So again, it's a very dangerous situation. And I think even the Chinese, which are concerned about the conflicts with the U.S., also don't want to see the U.S. Begin to fall apart in a disruptive way. I think they would like to see the U.S. take a more modest role in the international system as, one among equals of the great powers. But at the moment, if nothing is done and there's a massive economic crisis now, things could go very bad very quickly.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. is swallowing that humble pill very, very well. Go ahead.
Well, there's Senator. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say Senator Rand Paul. He made this point that all this resisting to reduce the U.S. empire, that the alternative wasn't to preserve it. He said either we can have a controlled reduction of empire to rebuild our strength, or you're going to see a collapse of this, and then it's going to be disorganized and it's going to be messy. And I think that is the ultimatum or the options, because a lot of the problems the U.S. has today is tied up to this hegemonic era. Keep in mind that in the 1990s, when many proposed, well, instead of having a multipolar system, let's just have one based on U.S. dominance. The argument against this was over time, the U.S. would begin to exhaust its resources. It would drown itself in debt. This would manifest itself as economic inequalities, social problems, political polarization. Meanwhile, its hegemonic ambitions would encourage other centers of power to collectively balance the U.S. We see all of this now. The U.S. has unsustainable debt. It has social, economic, and political tensions. And meanwhile, countries like Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, India, all of them cooperating to be less dependent on the United States. This is not an ideal position. So you can make the pro-American argument, if you will, that at the moment it's better for the U.S. to pull back to a more modest position, rebuild its strength, and preserve, its liberal democratic values, all of this, and all these things which are actually important to its own citizens. So I think there's a growing movement within the United States that doesn't see global primacy as being in the U.S. interest anymore.
Right. No, that is certainly true. It's just trying to get those old neocons to go along with that, and it's quite challenging. Quite challenging. Professor Glen Diessen, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here and giving us your insight. I do have a link down below for people to go to your YouTube channel. You do a show, it seems like every day, practically. You're putting stuff out there and having great conversations with a lot of excellent guests. Is there anywhere else people should go to find you? I also have you linked on X. So we've got your X profile down there. We have your YouTube, your X. Is there anything else? Anywhere else people should go?
Well, I have a Substack where I also publish articles, but my podcast is mostly actually with American experts, so a lot of John Mersheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, and the likes.
Yeah, excellent lineup of guests on your show and excellent topics, more importantly. So, Professor Glen Diessen, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you again for having me on.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you can watch Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific at KimIversonShow.com. toppled.com. See you there.